This is Rocky Snyder. At the tone, leave your name and message and I'll get back to you.
I actually witnessed the geese chasing the kids on practice the other day. Coach here, he was trying his best to keep the kids safe, but I actually got a crack out of it.
Welcome to this episode of the RockFit Files. I'm Rocky Snyder, and with me is Dave Hedges. Dave is a strength coach and sports injury specialist in Dublin, Ireland. You know, he is a colleague of Anthony Claffey, who we've had on in previous episode. But Dave himself has been doing anatomy, is studying anatomy and motion and using the flow motion model like all the other guests so far. And he with his strength coach and coaching and his studio called Wild Geese Fitness Training, or WG Fit shortened. He and I are just going to back and forth a whole bunch of experiences and ideas and how we as strength coaches entered into anatomy and motion and how we have unfolded or unpacked all of the intense information to make it digestible for our clients and for our own program design. So Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Absolutely my pleasure. Good to meet you.
So first of all, how long have you been a strength coach and sports injury specialist?
I started off, we'll say, as a fitness trainer, I think it's about 2007. I've been teaching martial arts in some capacity or another pretty much since I was 16, when my instructor put me in front of class for the first time. So I've instructed forever. But we went down the fitness training route around 2007 as just more of the karate guys I was working with wanted more and more fitness. So we started doing that and then certified, qualified. And I just discovered that I should have been doing this for years beforehand.
Now, what styles of martial arts? Because this is interesting. I was speaking with somebody else who's a martial artist and very much into jiu-jitsu. And when he took the anatomy and motion course, he could really relate it so easily to martial arts. And I wonder if that's your experience. So what models of or schools of training have you been through?
Right. So I started out in Wado-Ryu Karate. That's my base, my foundation. I got my black belt in that when I was 18, when I should have been going to school. I was going training. And then when I left town, I sort of took on we'll say a nomadic sort of lifestyle. So I was kind of moving around. I was in one area for a while, then I moved to another area, and whatever was in that area is what I trained. I mean, whatever club was around, I just went to. So a village I was living in, there was no martial arts club, but there was a friend of mine, met a guy who was very experienced in Wing Chun and a couple of Chinese arts, so we just get together and bounce off each other. I lived in another place where we did kickboxing, place where I did Aikido, studied Wing Chun for a while, this and that, around and about. When I came to Ireland, that's when I was doing Ed Parker's American Kempo. That's where I met Paulie, who we started working on Eskrima together. He had Philippine martial arts, Kali, you guys generally call it. So we've done the Kempo and the Eskrima to quite a high level. And then it's just a case of, if there's somebody willing to train with us, we trained. If somebody had a different style, well, then we'd swap and we'd play and we'd banter about. And our Wild Geese Centre was set up as a martial arts venue. And we have, obviously we were doing Kempo and Eskrima, but then we've got a judo coach, we have a Thai boxing coach, we have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach. There's now a lad in doing an Aikido class once a week. So yeah, martial arts has been kind of a center point for everything.
And so how did you, just a little kind of backstory about how you connected to Gary's work with anatomy and motion. How did that come about?
Transitioning from the martial arts guy into the strength coach, well, fitness instructor first, and then just kind of got more and more involved, and then helping the martial arts guys more and more, the competitors, the Thai boxers. We started getting in. We got a reputation for getting good results from people, and a really good reputation because martial artists are always injured. So we got really good at working with these injuries helping people, not rehabbing them, but just train them in such a manner that they got better, they got back in the game, they started doing right well, and that attracted mountain bikers and triathletes and other, maybe non-contact psychopaths. They're still lunatics. Have you ever worked with a triathlete? They're mental.
Yeah. There's one. It's just straight ahead in so many ways, just one-dimensional.
Yep, but they're as tough as any full-contact fighter. I built a relationship with a physiotherapy clinic nearby, a guy called Andrew Watson. And he was a friend of a friend. He was recommended to me. And immediately we started recognizing that we were on similar wavelengths. He's the physio, but he's got a strength coach background. He's worked in athletic rehabilitation. And we just got on really, really well. He could do the top-end injury rehab stuff, but then he's very happy sending it back to me so I could continue that on into a program and, continue the athletes' rehab back into performance. So it was through talking to him. This was going back, I'd say about 8 years or so now, just chatting to him one day. And I just said, FMS was the thing at the time.
Yeah.
FMS was everywhere. And I just said to him, I need a better way to assess people, just so I know what they can do and what they shouldn't do, and when to send them to you. And he was kind of looking at me going, yeah, you could do FMS, you could do this, you could do that. And he says, do you know what? Anatomy in Motion are coming to Dublin. A friend of Andy's, David McGettigan, I think they were in college together. So McGettigan had done the Anatomy in Motion course in London and spoke very highly of it. So Andy recommended it to me, said they were coming to Dublin and that I should look into it. And this is back when they were teaching level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So I booked myself onto level 1 and never looked back. It's a great system.
Yeah. It's so funny how parallel our careers have been, because FMS was the end all be all, but it was the only game in town. It started as a screening process. For those listening, if you're not familiar with the initials FMS, it stands for the Functional Movement Screen, developed by a couple of physical therapists and a chiropractor by the names of Greg Cook, Lee Burton, and Greg Rose. And they developed, there you go, the book Movement by Greg Cook. Dave was just holding up on the screen.
My mouse map.
It started out with 12 different kind of movements. They called movement screens. Excuse me, and then it worked down to 7 screens. And initially it was a screening process for high school athletes to make sure they were competent enough and have the ability to begin a resistance training program. And the fitness industry just took it and ran with it beyond that
Beyond belief.
approach, right? And pretty soon it became the end-all be-all of how do we assess people, when in truth it's not really an assessment tool. It's just a screening process that, do you have the flexibility here or the control here, and so on. But it, for me, and I'm sure for you, Dave, it left more questions than it answered. And it provided a very easy path to follow without necessarily considering anything. You just looked at the chart, and whatever they scored, here's what you need to do based on that. And so it didn't give me what I needed. And so when I found Gary Gray and then Gary Ward, I knew I was on the right path. So you took the course, and I'm curious, how did that change you? Because if you haven't been listening, the flow motion model, Anatomy in Motion, is all about joint mechanics of the body and how we move through space, specifically the gait cycle. And knowing that, you can overlay that ideal onto anybody and how they move and stand, and get a better understanding of what they need from a physical standpoint, from training, conditioning, or a therapeutic approach. So how did that change you, Dave? Did it?
Oh God, yeah. Yes, it did. So the way they used to teach the courses very differently in recent years, but when I was doing it, level 1 was a 3-day course. And it wasn't well known back then. I was on the very, very first course in Ireland. So I'm sat in this room, and I love this, but we're going around the room, semicircular chairs. I'm in the end chair on this side, and he goes around from the opposite side. Introduce yourself. Who are you? Where have you been? Okay. And it's like, I'm so-and-so. I've just finished physiotherapy school. I'm so-and-so. I've had an osteopath clinic for 15 years. I'm this. And this is every person around the room. And they get to me at the end, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm the shaved monkey in the room. Excuse my French there. And I was like, well, I'm Dave, and I shout at people. But so, like, I'm here because I wanted a better assessment model. Now, just what you said about the FMS there, probably my thinking at the time, the FMS would have served the purpose I was looking for, in that I knew I had to refer people out, but I wanted something clearer. Just to, the way I view the FMS, it's a filter, it's a sieve. So I wanted to run everybody through this sieve and go, right, you're good to go, you're good to go, you're okay, but we need to work on this, and you have to go and see the physio. That's basically what I wanted. The anatomy of motion gave me all that and an absolute metric ton more, an unbelievable amount. With the martial arts background, I've done a lot of Chinese martial arts, Qigong as well, where, I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of Qigong, like Tai Chi type movements.
Yes.
When you look into it, especially when you look back at it post REM training, that is all biomechanics. It's all joint angles and aligning the joints in such a way. I think this gets missed so much that if we align the joints in a certain way, get the bone structure in a certain way, the muscles load optimally to produce the power you're looking for. And within the first sort of day of the anatomy of motion teaching, because the way they used to teach it back then, that just clicked. It's like, this is what we're doing. This is almost the Chinese martial arts way of looking at the body, but way beyond that, and less martial arts specific and more just basic human movement specific. Yeah, that just started clicking. And like, don't get me wrong, I walked out of every day, my head's banging. I had a migraine for about a month afterwards. The amount of information and the intensity of the course was off the charts. It was brilliant. But having the gym meant, before I got on the course, I'd spoken to a lot of my regular members and said, right, I'm going on this course, I need volunteers. So I had about 12 people lined up afterwards to practice on. They all donated the bodies. It was brilliant. So we were back to level 2. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what. Basically just sort of somehow getting some results for some people, but didn't have a clue what I was doing. So we went back to level 2. That gave further information, really sort of tapped it up. I'd say the first two, doing level 1, level 2, and it was a while then before level 3 came around, but it gives you an identity crisis in that joint mechanics are set up in such a way to optimize the gait cycle, which I think you've been talking about. And if you look at pretty much all mammals, the idea is you arrive into the world, you're up on your feet, and you're able to at least follow your mother about. Humans takes a bit longer. But the gait cycle is everything. Yeah, we're either walking or we're breathing. That's the two primary movement patterns. That's it. Nothing else really matters very much after that. But yeah, we've invented all these exercises to train the muscles in such a manner that they don't take into account what the muscles really do, what the joints that these muscles control are really set up for. You're looking at it, you've got this gym education, and then you add in this highly detailed anatomy motion education, and the two of them just don't marry up for a while. And it takes a while for that to sort of filter in and get your head around it, and eventually the penny slowly starts to drop. The light bulb slowly starts to come on, and it changes everything about the way you coach, the way you look at people.
Yeah, it's It's funny, as you're talking about the approach that we have been taking in strength training and focusing on the muscles, not on the joints, focusing on the specific larger muscle or major muscle groups and an isolating kind of aesthetic reasoning for bodybuilding or whatever. And that's what we've founded everything upon. It reminds me of this movie that I can't remember the name of. Back in the 80s, it was kind of a comedy, but a large defense contractor were selling these weapons of major destruction, like fighter jets, to these African nations that were very rich and they could afford these fighter jets, and they sold them to their warring faction, and they weren't educated enough to actually know how to use the jets and fly them and strafing runs and whatnot. So the tribes would just push them down the hill at one another, and they would crash into each other. And whichever one survived, that would be the winner of the war. And I kind of think that's kind of what we've been doing with exercises. We've got such an amazing machine that we're born with, and yet we don't have an instruction manual. And so we've been just taking it and hurling it against whatever we can. And if it survives and gets stronger, then we're considered really good strength coaches. But now we actually came with an instruction manual in the form of the flow motion model. And now we can look at everything we've been doing with a completely different lens. And there's no such thing as a bad exercise. I'm going to say that right now. It all depends upon the body that's executing it. If they should be doing that, if they have the ability to or whatnot, the responsibility and all they need for it. But are there movements that you have in your regular menu of conditioning that you've moved away from? The things that you don't typically do as much anymore, now that you're looking at how joints move rather than the previous way?
I'm going to say no to that. Because there's a lot of movements I didn't use anyway. Now, my gym studio is essentially a big empty room with a lot of kettlebells at one end.
Excellent.
And all right, we've got more kit developed over the years, but that's still the core of what we do. And so the training that we've always used has largely been using kettlebells, using body weight, and then when we really want a big CNS overload, deadlift, power clean with the barbell. We've never been a big squat gym, never. I find it's not that it's definitely not a bad exercise, it's a great exercise, but bodies, especially if they're adult athletes, if they're coming into training as an adult, they're just not ready for it. It takes so long to get them ready to put a bar on that you're almost better not bothering. Do you know what I mean? You can get so much out of single leg work, split squats, goblet squats, that I never found a huge need for developing big barbell squats. But, the deadlift's a big feature in the gym. We never got into a lot of the bodybuilding stuff, which is where I think a lot of the bad exercise, the injurious exercises, the ones that sort of wear and tear on the body. We never really used them so much. Bodyweight exercises, and I've seen some of yours, so you're a big fan of bodyweights as well. They tend to be a lot more self-limiting, self-correcting, and they teach more control of the body. And coming from the martial arts and with the idea that we're training for performing better in something, even if you're not an athlete, my mentality is you're here to get better at something. We're training you to be ready for something. You define what that something is. That's your business. All right. Some guys, it's plain and simple. They're getting in the ring, or they've got a mountain bike race, or whatever. Other guys, they're just there. They start, I just want to get fit. But a few months down the line, they're not just getting fit. They're getting ready for whatever life throws at them. The best compliment I ever get is when lads say, I can get on and off the floor and play with my kids better. That's a training win. and that's better than the gold medalist of the trophies that the guys bring back. But we're talking exercise selection. I think you said it right it's the body, not the exercise. And if you can get, I'll add another thing to that, it's the intention as well. So you've got to have a body that's capable of doing the exercise. You've got to have the correct intention behind the exercise choice as well as that. Because, the right body doing the wrong exercise is not going to go well. The wrong body doing the right exercise is not going to go well. So it's marrying the two together. And this is where the assessment idea comes in. This is why I wanted to know more about assessment. That's why we went down the anatomy and motion routes, in that it gives you that assessment.
Okay, so if somebody, let's take it from there then, because you were pursuing anatomy and motion in hopes of, or not hopes, but you found that this is much more than the FMS and then some. You're using it as an assessment, a screening process to know when to outsource to the physio or whomever. Mm-hmm. But let's just take it from the moment somebody walks into your studio. Now that you have gone for many years following the flow motion model anatomy and motion coursework and continue to do so with the online educational platform and whatnot, when somebody comes in to see you, what is the assessment protocol that you do with them? And I know that it may vary from one person to another, but in general, can you give us a sense of what that's like?
Yeah, I can run you through the whole lot. So I'm just going to caveat this, that before I was in as a fitness coach, I worked in the bar and hotel trade. I've done everything from bar work to restaurant work, and a good number of years in the security as a doing door work and other elements of security. So as far as I'm concerned, the assessment starts the instant I lay eyes on you. So you're reading body language, you're looking for the non-verbal cues. Then you're the introduction. Hi, how you doing? And you're getting tone of voice, sentence construction, the tilt of the head, the eye movements, all this kind of stuff. So this is where assessment starts. You're getting the person. Who is this person? What is this person? And when you get used to doing this on an ongoing basis, a guy that's coming into you 2 or 3 times a week, and all of a sudden something changes, it's like, oh, flag. Let's watch a bit more carefully. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, very much.
So with the new member, somebody who's brand new, you're sort of feeling them out, because are they going to be the right fit for the gym? Are we going to get on with each other quite well? Are we going to struggle? Is there going to be a bit of friction? Personality clash, that kind of thing. Are they going to be coachable, or are they going to be answering back all the time? Are they going to be asking intelligent questions? Because that's my favorite thing. Love it when they ask questions. So we're looking for all this. Then we get on the training floor, right? So then they walk onto the training floor. So you get to see them walk from whatever angle. And we've got mirrors and all that, so you can see different angles without them knowing. And they walk on, and you're getting a, right, what am I looking for? Is there anything that's flagging up, right? Is there a little limp? Are they holding one shoulder higher than the other? Is one arm swinging and not the other one? Are they holding their head at a funny angle? Is there a bit of a skip in the step and the full of beans? Are they dragging the feet? All these things you're just getting. So this is all, I class all this as assessment. And all we're doing so far is saying hello and watching. That's it. Now, we've got 2 sort of levels of clients. We've got the general guys who come in, and we put them through a simple basic warm-up, which is, you could call it's my FMS, if you like. And that would be, it's a basic body weight. Well, you get them skipping first. So the jumping rope. So you know straight away, coordination, cardiovascular fitness. You get an idea of the training history just from watching them skip. Then we've got a 4 movement warm up. So there's a body weight squat. There's a reverse lunge, stepping back into a lunge. There's like an up dog, down dog transition, like a Hindu push-up without the push-up, and a glute bridge. And I get them through 10 reps of each exercise. There's a circuit. We've got twice through it. And you just watch. Show them the exercise real quick and then have them do it. So you're not cueing them. You know what I mean? You show them real quick, right, off you go. And they do it. And the first round, you really have a look because that's where everything's going to be all over the place. Second round, you see how they've improved, if they've improved. And that's the just everyday general population screen coming in.
Okay.
And then every single movement from there on, you're just remembering what did they do in the warm-up, and then, right, okay, how are they going to do this kettlebell swing? How are we going to build this? What's the push-up going to look like? Because those 4 movements, I think, show you enough to get enough of an idea. When we're talking about the sort of the more personal training clients or the athletes, well, those guys we do a much more in-depth. So we usually get them in and we do about a 90-minute full look at them. And that involves a good long conversation about where they're from, where they're coming from, where they want to go to, old injuries, current injuries. We watch how we look at them, how they stand. We do some movement screen stuff. We watch them walk. Anything that stands out, we investigate further through the flow motion sort of idea. We investigate further, deeper down, and we look at how we can get them from wherever they are when they walked in to a more relaxed and ready sort of plumb line, like skeleton plumb line balanced position. And then the stuff that we've done to get them into that, well, that becomes the foundation of their warm-up. And the theory then is, the working theory that I use is, if I can warm them up in such a way that doesn't just get their heart rate up and gets a sweat, but also aligns the joints, aligns the skeleton, gets everything moving just sweet, then they can do any exercise after that. They can do almost anything after that. And if we continue to do that, then those warm-up exercises become correcting, hopefully. So they're doing them by rote at this point. You know, if they're training 4 or 5 days a week, that's 4 or 5 warm-ups, which is all the reset stuff that gets them just right. And then the workout should reinforce that. And this is the sort of working theory that we use, and it does seem to work out for us, that the athlete then just gets better, 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 and injuries fall away.
Now, do you use that warm-up routine as the warm-down routine also? And why I ask that is because some of those lifts that you might do, not to say that they don't help maintain that nice centrated body, but what if there are certain movements that draw the person further away? Do you bring them back to a more balanced point at the end of the routine as well? Or do you just wait until the warm up for the next routine?
Well, there's kind of 2 answers to that. If there's a movement that draws them away from that, well, that movement has to go.
Okay.
That movement is no good.
Right.
Yeah, this is
how do you determine that though? How do you determine that? Just by watching them?
Yeah, always watching. You know, I mean, this is the beauty of having kind of an open plan floor. There's nowhere to hide. There's mirrors down one wall, so even if I'm not looking at you, I can see you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you know, guys will say that I've got eyes in the back of your head, and they get away with nothing. But if you know, do an exercise, you have a rest period. So your rest period, what do people do? They walk around a wee bit, they shake it out on that. So you're constantly checking. You're looking at how they're performing the exercise, and if you perform an exercise and it's not right, well, why is it not right? If it's not right because it's pushing in a bad position, it's bringing out, we'll say compensation. If there's a particular compensation we're trying to get rid of, and that exercise is reinforcing that compensation, you can see it in the performance of that exercise. You know what I mean? If you're looking for it. So if you know, for example, When somebody is walking, they really shunt their hip out to the right, just as an example. For whatever reason, reason is not important, but this is something you've spotted when they're walking about and you've assessed, you get them to do a bodyweight squat, the hip shunts out to the right, and right, okay, so we need to watch what they're doing. We build a warm-up, we build a program. The warm-up gets them just set, so when they're walking, that shunt out to the right is gone, okay? But then if they're doing an exercise, so maybe they're doing like an overhead press or something, and as they press those bells up, their hip shunts out to the right. It's like, woohoo, hey, now, we got rid of that, or we weren't doing that during this exercise or that exercise, why are we doing it in this one? Mm-hmm. So then we need to have a look. Either that exercise just gets put away, put on the shelf, we'll get it out later on at a later date, and we'll do something different instead, or there's something we haven't taken care of, there's something we've missed, and we need to go back and reassess. But now, because, what did I say? Overhead press. So it's an overhead press, so we need to reassess something. Is it core? Is it spine extension? Is it shoulder, scapular movement? Did we miss something when we went through those areas before? Do we need to go back in more detail? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's great. I really enjoy your explanation of that. And what's very interesting, and you'll probably attest to this as well, but the last few years, especially for me, is that you can watch somebody walk. And of course, we're not looking for specifics, but just how the mass of their body is being managed, you know, almost like with a blurred vision. And you can see when it's being managed inappropriately, I guess, or with a compromised strategy. Let's use that instead. Yeah. Where they're walking with a compromised strategy, and you can see that there's that sway off to one side and it comes back to center, but they're never swaying over to the opposite side. They're always kind of over there. And you give them a movement or an exercise, a lift or whatever, and that you watch them walk around and it's not there anymore. Going, okay, we're going to put that in your program. And then let's go over here. We're going to do this movement with an educated kind of hypothesis in place. However, no matter what, it's the body that's going to tell you whether or not it really enjoys that, because they do this second lift and you watch them walk around going, oh, that's right back to where you were beginning. And you may not be able to put exactly your finger on it, but you're starting to train yourself of seeing how these bodies are traveling through space. And after a while, you really get to see it at a different level. And then you can tell almost, I won't say always, but very readily on more occasions than not, I can give somebody a movement and then go have them walk around and go, yeah, that's what they need. And then other times go, oh, okay, there's something going on there. If I have time, we're going to investigate that a little bit more. But I've got 3 other people in this hour that I'm working with. Tell you what, we're going to put that one off to the side, and we're going to do the big buckets, the big payoffs that are giving you the ideal outcome that we're seeking. That's basically what you're saying too.
Exactly. I like what you said about the unfocused eye. You're kind of watching for patterns.
Yeah.
So we kind of know what we're looking for or what should be happening. This is what the flow motion model gives us. We know what the joint should be doing. And the unfocused eye throws out any aberration of that. Anything that doesn't fit that model just kind of stands out. And just taking this back to, you know, I grew up doing karate. I've done a lot of security work. So karate guys, 30 guys all stood in a line doing the same movement at the same speed, at the same pace. There's one instructor. So 30 guys, he can't watch 30 guys, but he can have the unfocused eye and be looking, and the one guy that does it wrong stands out like a sore thumb. It's that pattern idea. Same with watching a crowd in a security setting. You watch the crowd, and you're not looking at any one person. You just kind of, you know, you've got a panoramic sort of gaze. You just kind of unfocused eyes looking over the crowd, and all of a sudden there'll be a pattern emerges. It's like, oh, that's not right. It draws you in, so you can assess that situation. And it's the same way we look at the body. Everybody moves. Everybody moves within a pattern that, you know, we've evolved to move in. And then when something just flags out, there's something in it as an aberration of that pattern. There's something that stands out, well, that guides you to look at, right, so this isn't quite right. Let's follow the breadcrumbs. Let's go into more detail and see where that takes us.
Now, you and I are on so many similar paths. I could just go one after another, but the types of training tools that we both utilize are more old-fashioned, I guess, or more historic, perhaps you'd say, right? We both are very much into kettlebells. And of course, behind me here on the screen are a rack of Indian clubs, and I've got some Persian meals as well. And so start to swing those items around, and just what a wonderful way to train the body. I can just, I've been doing Indian clubs for several years prior to Anatomy in Motion, but what the interesting part is I can explore movements with those clubs in such a better way now that I have a much better understanding of, for you, you've always had that understanding with the martial arts. For me, my background was much more into wrestling, gymnastics, maybe a little dance, and rock climbing. So slightly different, but at the same level, the awareness of movement and placement and where you have to be, and a little background in Aikido, which I love. So if I ever find myself in Dublin, I know I'm going to come to your studio at least once a week for that class. But how has it been using those tools, the kettlebell and the clubs and all the other tools that you have there? Has the coursework changed the way in which you use those tools?
It's made me look into why I use those tools.
Yeah.
It's made me investigate the techniques that those tools employ. And when you're talking about clubs, meals, kettlebells, Bulgarian bags, these are swinging implements. So they're using momentum. They're using an eccentric emphasis on the body. You're doing the standard sort of presses and squats. That's a compression on the body. The Indian clubs in particular, and doing some of the Bulgarian bag exercises, you can feel the stretch on the body. It's kind of opposite nearly. But what I really enjoy is take the kettlebell swing from whatever style of school you learn your swing from, the methods you employ. That bell swings back between your legs and swings forward out in front of you. It's as simple as that. And it's done primarily with a hip hinge. Some schools use a bit more of a knee bend than others, and it doesn't matter, right? You sit back into your hips and you eccentrically load the hamstrings, you eccentrically load the glutes, and then you use that backswing like drawing a bow backwards. You'll release that tension that's built up from the stretch load. The body pops back up to straight and the bell swings forward. You know what I mean? It's the elegance of that movement is just astounding. The effect it has on the body is astonishing. I've come and gone with this belief that the kettlebell swing is the king of the exercises. That comes and goes as an idea. Some guys really hang their hat on it. But every time I really sit and think about it and explore the kettlebell swing from how a weightlifting exercise affects the body along the flow motion model lines, the kettlebell swing just stands out as the champion. And we think about how most people struggle with hamstring tension, hamstring weakness. Do you know what I mean? Tension because they're weak. Pelvic positioning, spine positioning. And all these are the things that the kettlebell swing very, very gently, because you can start with the kettlebell really easy, very, very gently improves upon until very quickly you've got a guy who comes in and he's struggling to get a 12 kilogram kettlebell moving, and then in 3 weeks' time, he's making the 24 kilo dance. Do you know what I mean? The body just comes on. It just comes online. And
I think a big reason for that is because up until this point, the majority of strength training lifts were mainly focused on the concentric model of just compressing, shortening, going from either neutral or slightly eccentric to a much more concentric range of motion. And with kettlebells, it's the eccentric load followed by a very short concentric contraction. It's almost just the antithesis. And the same thing with the Indian clubs, swinging those clubs and bags. All of this is, can I load and then just explode a burst? So we're not trying to compress the body so much as elongate it and free it up and give it that feeling of, here's the planet and here's gravity-free environment. And we're going from back and forth. Can we load and can we release? And that pumping mechanism, I mean, we could think about it that way, just pumping through the entire body or in the shoulder girdle. I mean, it's just remarkable how that not only affects circulation of just blood, but joints, capsules, the fluid that's flowing through it. So yeah, you're preaching to the choir on that one. So
another thing, another point on these, the swinging implements, whichever swinging implement you're using, is moving your center of mass around.
Yes.
You have to balance it. You have to counterbalance that, which I think is probably a point that's not talked about quite enough. That your combined center of gravity when you're swinging a kettlebell, it comes outside of your own body. And as the bell swings forward, especially as the weight of the bell increases relative to your body weight, as the bell swings forward, you have to lean back to counterbalance. As the bell goes back to the legs, your head has to come forward. So your head movement, there's vestibular action going on. You know what I mean? As you're counterbalancing this moving tool. You've got an Indian club that's swinging, and you've got a weight that's, I don't know, how long is your Indian club behind you?
Oh, it's about 2 feet, the 3-pounder, and most are 18 inches or so.
So you've got an extra 2 feet on the end of your arm that's swinging at some kind of velocity outside of your center of mass as you extend that out. And you've got to balance that. You've got to keep that right. You've got to learn not to rush the tool because you can't move faster than the tool's moving. You've got to learn, if you move slower than the tool's moving, it can hurt you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot of
blending, right? It's the art of blending.
You know, you're dancing with it. It is your martial art. It's your dance. You know.
Yes.
And like you said, that pumping, load, explode action. Well, that's who doesn't want to be able to do that better? What my guys are fighters, they're contact sports guys. Who doesn't want to load and explode better?
Great way to put it. And that's a great way to kind of bring this all wrapped up into a package, because we are at the end of our time frame. And I just love everything you brought into it and how you've incorporated all these principles and philosophies into an existing framework and just made it better. And I'm sure that your clients and members are experiencing the benefits as well as your own individual body. So Dave, thank you so much. This has been great. You know, if people want to find out, if people want to find out more about you and your services and WG Fit, or WG Fit, or Wild Geese Fitness, what's the best way to do that?
Well, the website is WG-Fit. I've been meaning to remove the dash for too many years now. So Wild Geese Fitness Training, if you just put it into Google, you'll find us. If you search Dave Hedges, you'll find me. I'm using Facebook less and less. Facebook's just getting horrible at the minute. It's getting quite toxic. I kind of like Instagram a bit better. Just Dave Hedges on Instagram. Put up a few videos of me training. I'll share some of the guys if they have their videos up through the Instagram. So yeah, the website is probably the best one. Instagram second, and then Facebook. Sure, I kind of weaning myself off that because it's just gotten horrible the last while.
Well, all of that will be in the description down below for contacting Dave. And if you're watching on the YouTube video, just look down the page. You'll see it there as well. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in this time. Dave, especially, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite.
If you'd like to find out more information about the Flow Motion Model, Anatomy and Motion courses, or Gary Ward himself, pick up a copy of his book, What the Foot. at findingcenter.co.uk. And while you're at it, pick up a copy of my book, Return to Center, where I take the flow motion model and apply it to strength training and conditioning. You can get a copy of that at rockysnyder.com. Thanks for listening.